Yeah. How do you think, because an extension of the ancestral message, which I think we both got tied up in pretty good. I mean, you were the carnivore MD for such a long time. Well intentioned health advice like low carb diets, even though they come from a good place. And I think, we often think that if we've got so much insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction, that it's easy to look at ultra processed foods and say, carbohydrates are problematic for diabetics. But we also know inherently that chronically restricted low carbohydrate diets over a long time can also be the very stressor that we're trying to avoid. So sometimes, how do you think like healthy messaging maybe gets it wrong with either, like you said, the fasting, super low carb, extreme exercises? What are some of the big culprits you'd like to call out there?
Those are all culprits. I mean, time restricted eating, fasting, caloric restriction, carbohydrate restriction. Carbohydrates are pro-thyroid.
Right.
Even things like honey, very healthy for the thyroid. Fruit, there's no evidence that fruit or honey are bad for humans metabolically. This is really conflated ideas and misunderstood concepts. In diabetics, the mitochondria are essentially broken. That is what's going on in metabolic dysfunction. And you don't tolerate carbohydrates well, but carbohydrates didn't get you there. And so, yeah, some restriction of carbohydrates is probably prudent in the short term, but it's important to understand that a moderate amount of carbohydrates is not problematic in diabetes. I mean, 50, 70, 80, 100 grams of carbohydrates a day is probably fine, depending on the source. I mean, I've spoken about this many times in the past. There are studies with honey up to 125 grams a day over 8 weeks in diabetics that actually improved insulin sensitivity and glucose handling. So the diabetes thing has been overly simplified. But yeah, I think that fasting is tricky, right? Fasting is not good for your thyroid. Immediately when you stop eating and you start fasting, we can see reverse T3 go up and thyroid hormones go down. We immediately see your body temperature go down. Point in case, we've talked about it all throughout this podcast. So your body is turning down energy metabolism when you start fasting. Do we really have enough data to say that the risk, is outweighed by the benefit in terms of autophagy? I'm not convinced that we do. If people find benefit in fasting, fine, but just understand you're really trading a lot. You're making a trade-off there, and there certainly are harms and stressors that come with fasting. I think that overall, the carbohydrate fearing that has been really fanned by the likes of people like Glucose Goddess and stuff like this is a disservice to people. I think that having a blood sugar that rises after you eat is normal human physiology and is not pathological. And a lower glucose rise postprandial doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. If we're going to get super granular about, postprandial glucose curves and correlate them with potential postprandial insulin, it has more to do with the area under the curve. So you have to do an integral rather than the absolute, apex of the curve, which is not necessarily something that anyone is really understanding the nuance around. So there's no problem with your blood sugar rising. A healthy individual will have a blood sugar rise. After I eat honey, post-surf, my blood sugar is certainly going to rise, but it then comes immediately back down to baseline, and the area under the curve is quite small. And there are many benefits to that rise in blood sugar. Insulin signaling connected with glutathione, probably signals to the thyroid connected with that insulin signaling. Again, it's abundance versus scarcity. And what we know is that carbohydrates are this indelible signal of abundance for humans throughout our existence, unquestionably. Like, when there is fruit, when there is honey, life is good. We also need fat, and protein is not as in scarcity, not as scarce a supply as people might think. There's a lot of animals in the wild. There's not a lot of fatty animals in the wild, but you can definitely get protein. We saw this when I was with the Hadza, but what they really wanted was carbohydrates. They certainly celebrate the meat, and the fattiest bits of meat are what they really want, but they don't really shun the carbohydrates or the honey at all.
All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed that show and you now have everything that you need to maximize your thyroid and your energy. But the missing ingredient might just be some desiccated thyroid in your life. So if you want to get your hands on Thyroid Plus early, go to heartandsoil.co, take the thyroid quiz, and you will be rewarded with early access and a 20% discount off your supplements. Go now. We'll see you there.